Hi, good evening. This is the Commonwealth Report, and I'm State Senator Mark Pacheco. Tonight we have with us a special guest, Steve Smith, who is the top person for the Southeast Regional Economic Development District here in our region of the Commonwealth. So please stay tuned. We're going to have a public service message for you, and stay right there. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Commonwealth Report. I'm State Senator Mark Pacheco, and we have on the program today the Executive Director of the Southeastern Massachusetts Economic Development District here in Southeastern Massachusetts. His name is Steve Smith, and I want to thank you, Steve, for being on the program today and being with us.
Well, it's great to be with you, Senator, and I should say that a lot of people know us as just SERPED because the name is so long and complicated, so SERPED will do fine.
It is unbelievable, the alphabet soup of all the agencies and nonprofits and
That's for sure.
everything that takes place. But I do think it's important when we think about SERPED for people to understand all the very important work that goes on there. All the regional big picture issues that you're dealing with and we all live with as citizens of the region one way or the other based upon the decisions that are made. Maybe you could tell the viewing audience a little bit more about SERPED.
Sure. It's not easy to describe, but we're concerned about the future, thinking ahead, what's going to happen with this region, Southeastern Mass, and we represent basically all of your district plus other communities. But what we should be ready for in the future: transportation, jobs, environment, land use. So we're unique in a couple of ways. We look at all aspects of a problem. We're not just there advocating for jobs. We got to consider the environmental impacts and so forth, so we cross those issues. And we go across city and town boundaries. These problems don't confine themselves to city and town boundaries. Traffic doesn't stay in one town. So we have to take a regional approach to doing it as well.
Mm-hmm. And it takes a lot of coordination and a lot of expertise to do it. I've known you for many years, and you've been the executive director there. Now I won't even try to contemplate how many years it has been, but it's many years, probably well over. It must be close to 30 years.
It's been 30. This year is 30.
This year is 30 years.
Yep.
Congratulations, and
thank you.
And congratulations for all the success that SERPED has had too. But you also have an extremely competent staff that you've assembled over the years, dealing with a whole range of issues, transportation,
yep,
being one of them, and we'll talk a little bit about that for a moment or two here during the interview. But I think your staff does an outstanding job in terms of the research that they do.
We've got a great staff. A lot of them have been there, more than half of them have been there at least 10 years, some of them 20, 25 years. So they know the region, they know Southeastern Mass, they care about it, they do it as a labor of love, not just a job for them. So it's been great.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the region in terms of well, let's give us the big picture viewpoint first, and then we'll come down to particular areas. During your tenure at SERPED, I mean, you've seen a lot of changes for the region going back to the days when the Miles Standish Industrial Park in Taunton only had one major company in it, and now we have close to 7,000 private sector employees that are there. We've seen a lot of changes in the highway systems. Many changes relative to bridge repairs, to changes in economic development, higher education, changes within the region. Maybe you could just point to some of the things when you look back over your tenure, the big picture things that have really started to make a difference in the region, either for the positive or the negative.
Well, it's been mostly positive. It's often been slower than we like. But, I often use the Miles Standish Industrial Park as a really good example of what's happened, because you go back 30 years ago, 495 between Route 95 and 24 wasn't there. It didn't exist. There's 13 miles of a gap. Was under construction. Miles Standish Industrial Park had what? Pepsi-Cola, I think, was the only thing there.
And Waters Associates was there.
And so, it was, and the transformation, that facility by itself, it sort of speaks to some things that have happened in the region, and a good model for what can happen elsewhere in the region, because as you said, it went from basically zero to about 7,000 jobs. The highway made an enormous difference. It really tells us a lot about how much transportation investment can make in terms of driving our economy. And so that's been a real success story. But, we have different problems, new problems. Certainly growth brings problems. Growth brings strains on the environment. But I think the region's in a lot better place than it was 30 years ago, that's for sure. I'd like to take some credit for it. I don't claim to do that, but certainly with you and your fellow legislators have really kept the state's focus on this region, and it's really made a difference.
Well, you should take some credit for it, because a lot of that has needed a plan for the region. And Serpent has been a very important partner with mayor's offices, boards of selectmen, conservation agencies, even the private sector with chambers and different task forces that have come together, the higher education institutions within the region. When we're looking at demographic issues, when we're looking at planning ahead for the future, you need to have the research done. And you folks have done an outstanding job with that. Transportation. Let's talk about transportation.
That's a big one.
It's a big issue, and it was quite a controversial issue this year.
Yep.
When you look at the transportation bond bill, as you know, I ended up not voting for the bill, not because I don't believe we need the investment in transportation. I think the investment in transportation is critically needed. Yeah. I was very disappointed at the level of investment that we ended up settling on, the way we financed it, and most saddened by the fact that out of all the years that we have been working on rail completion in southeastern Massachusetts, that we're not guaranteed in the bill that was passed to see it actually funded. Yeah. And that was disappointing to me, and that's one of the main reasons why I voted against it, because I just believe that we as a region now need to start standing up not only with the rhetoric but also with the votes. Yeah. When we're not getting our fair share of what should take place here for the region. But talk in general about the transportation bill, is I think on balance the rest of it, there are critical needs that do need to be funded, and there are bridges that will be fixed, there are highway systems that will be repaired and maintained, but there's so much more to do if we're going to have a real active, vibrant 21st century economy.
Well, I think you're absolutely right about that. And I can't say I'm displeased with I guess it's $800 million was the number that the final package was. But the needs are enormous, and the needs are greater than that. I was disappointed that we couldn't do more than 3 cents on the gas tax. The gas tax goes up and down, seems like 10 cents a week, and all that money is going into the pockets of the oil companies. And that would have been a nice source to have that investment, because the needs are enormous, and we have to start with South Coast Rail. which is a big project and has gone on as long as I've been director, which is way, way too long. And we've built, the MBTA has expanded the rail into Franklin and Worcester and Rhode Island and Fitchburg all the time that we've been waiting. And it would have been nice to have more assurance that project would go ahead. I'm still confident that it'll happen, but you know, it's an enormously important project for the region, particularly for Taunton, Fall River, and New Bedford, because of the investment it can bring. It can be a spur investment in their downtowns, in your downtowns, and make things really, really pop from a development standpoint. So hopefully that still goes ahead. There are other projects. You know, we have enormous needs. Middleborough Rotary. I know that's in your district, and that has been, how long is it we've been talking about solving that problem?
For about as long as we've been talking about rail.
You know, and part of that has been that there have been other issues other than money that have delayed that. But we're talking about, depending on whose solution you take, somewhere between $25 and $38 million to solve that solution. The people who sit trying to get through that rotary every morning and every evening, that can't happen soon enough. But we got projects like that all over the region. The Berkeley-Dighton Bridge, which is under construction. It's slow, taking a long time. We've got critical needs on Route 24, the 140 interchange, the Route 44 interchange, basically the section of Route 24 that goes through Taunton and Raynham up to where it joins 495. Could go to 3 lanes instead of 2. So we have lots of needs. There is good money on the table. It would be nice if there were more money because the feds are not stepping up to the plate and the state has to do more in their absence.
Yeah, I mean, gone are the days when we had a real active federal investment in infrastructure. I know the Obama administration is trying to move an agenda in that regard, but you know, not able to get anything really seriously through the Congress, and that's very unfortunate for the future of job creation, not just here in Massachusetts, but in this country. You know, I talked just for a second, and I know that you have not had a problem with the gas tax. I voted against the gas tax, not because I believe that that particular form was problematic, but because we had other options that were available and other strategies that we should be looking at that we didn't even come close to doing, and that frustrated me as well. That we had the option for pricing carbon in the Commonwealth that was part of the Global Warming Solutions Act, something that the legislature has already voted on. It's part of law that we need to be looking at polluters in the pollution that is taking place with carbon, and the administration can put in place a compliance mechanism to bring in revenue by measuring, tons of carbon. And unfortunately, we never even had that discussion, which frustrated me. We didn't have the discussion on the one hand, which would have been more merit-based in terms of, raising revenue, and yet we were raising revenue, percentage of which we're not guaranteed we'd get our share. And so that became a problem for me, and I hope that the Patrick administration will do what they say they're going to do, and that's try to lock up as many contracts with the rail system as possible. The problem that I see, Steve, is that we could have another governor. In fact, we will have another governor. Yep. And depending upon what that governor campaigns on, we do know that Charlie Baker, for example, campaigned against the rail. So if he should be elected governor, and if he has the same position this time, that would mean that those construction contracts would never go out to bid.
Well, you're right. Let me just back up on the carbon tax a little bit, because you're absolutely right.
Well, carbon pricing, not necessarily the tax,
right,
but
you're a good point.
We can do the pricing.
But you know, I'm the planner. I'm the one who should be worried about that stuff. But you're correcting me correctly. So I mean, I say the gas tax because I agree with you. The carbon pricing makes the most sense, both from a revenue standpoint, environmental standpoint. The gas tax is an easy handle. People understand that, so I relate to it. But it's not the best solution, and I
And it was more regressive than some of the
Yeah.
other issues. I mean, the working class, you know, folks that are out there, you know, needing to use their automobile, you know, in the metropolitan Boston area, it's an easy tax for people to vote for, because most people don't have to use the automobile. You know, they have the commuter rail system. And so it becomes a, you know, a different option all across the state. Certainly, you need to have revenue to pay for things. There's no question about it. And so we as taxpayers want things. We want to have a safe highway system. We want to have the bridges fixed. We want all of these things done. At the same time, it's tough to come up with exactly how the best and fairest way to pay for them is. I just was frustrated that we were going to raise this money in what I believe is more of a regressive way compared to some of the other options that we had, and we're not going to get our fair share back. And so anyway, what about we just had a major election that took place here in southeastern Massachusetts, in the town of Raynham.
Right.
For one of the major slot parlors, the only slot parlor that would be eligible. And an overwhelming majority of the townspeople in Raynham came out to vote for the slot parlor proposal. Tell me a little bit about what the Regional Planning Agency sees in the future relative to these types of issues.
Well, we've been working with the Gaming Commission and in the role of saying to help the proponents, Raynham Park and others, work with the surrounding communities. As you know, under the legislation, the proponent, the casino developer going forward, is supposed to negotiate surrounding community agreements on the impacts with the towns around that. Now, that's a major deal with a big casino, not so much with the slot parlors. I think Raynham got a big boost. As you know, they're competing for the only slot parlor license, and I think there are 4 competitors for it. Plainridge in Plainville was probably a really strong applicant for that, but they were disqualified last week because of the management issues. So they're not going forward. That, coupled with the Raynham vote, I think gives Raynham a good inside track. I was on the phone yesterday with the Gaming Commission, the Raynham folks, and I think they've got a really good shot, and we'd be working with them on mitigating some of the issues. But as they say, you know, they'll be hiring back people who were laid off when the dog track closed down. It's been there. It's been an operating facility, and while there will be some impacts, they're mostly known. We know what they are. We've dealt with them, so it's a manageable issue, and we'll see. The Gaming Commission, I think it's December, they will make their decision on who gets that slot parlor license, and I think Raynham's got a great shot at being the one that gets that.
Well, they should have a good shot because they actually have the strength of being the only proponent, I believe, for a slot parlor that has years of experience in gaming here in Massachusetts. So there may be other partners that are bringing forth experience in working with other jurisdictions across the country, but the only proponent that has had that experience and has been doing it and investing their resources, actually providing jobs, helping the economy here for years is the Raynham proposal, Raynham Park, and so that should count for something.
Yeah, no, I think, and the Gaming Commission will make the decision. You got to wonder how they look at the Mashpee Wampanoag proposal and whether they see that as too close to the Raynham facility and whether that's part of their consideration. They've actually said no, it's not. But
yeah, I was glad to see that they've said no, because we in the legislature, when we passed the legislation, looked at that, because a slot pile proposal could be put in any zone of the 3 zones. So in one of the zones, there will be a slot parlor that will be in the same zone where there will be a standalone commercial-based or a tribal, casino. So I think when you look at the net revenue of even proposal, even if it was Raynham and the Wampanoags, or Raynham and a commercial-based casino in southeastern Massachusetts, I still think it does, far more revenue in the southeast region than, say, a Western Mass, casino will do.
And let me just compliment you and the members of the legislature for the legislation you wrote, because I've worked with it, I've studied it, I'm in the process, and it's very thorough. I mean, I really think you got it right in terms of the process you set up, and I think that Massachusetts can be a model for the rest of the country.
And what we're really trying to do is, we had the advantage, and as you know, the point person from the Senate on that was Stanley Rosenberg, the majority leader, who is a very good friend of mine in the legislature, and he was the point person. He traveled all across the country, went to places in other countries, looking at the whole gaming issue. We had the advantage of having a lot of other states that have already been through these issues and have been through the process, and we had the opportunity to learn from a lot of mistakes that were made in other jurisdictions, trying to get the market issues right, at least at the beginning. I mean, obviously this will change over time, but we wanted to put something in place with a commission so the individual legislators could then back off, get away from it, let the commission handle the implementation, which there's a lot more work with the implementation of it than there is in terms of establishing the overall playing field within which all the bidding and everything else takes place. Who would have assumed, for example, a few months ago that you'd only have one proponent coming in from the southeast region? Yeah. I don't think anybody would have realized that would have actually happened. What about the other issues in terms of dams and bridges and other types of things?
I've been going out and saying that one of my objectives is to keep Taunton out of the national news. And people say, "What we want to be in the national news," but you make the national news when the downtown is about to get flooded out from the dams. And I know you've been so personally involved in the project to remove those dams on the Mill River, which pose such a great threat to the downtown. And that's been a great success story. I understand you were on a piece of heavy equipment doing the initial
they lured me up there. It was interesting. It reminded me of my old days right out of school and using some of that equipment. But it was great to see that Winton Pond Dam actually start to come down, and they're well on the way to restoring that whole riverway.
What do we got? Two dams down, one in the process, and one to go. I understand the herring are back, and it'll be a great improvement. It'll be a change, but it should be a great improvement, and it's to your credit, because I know you've been on the front lines in doing that, and it's a real credit to you, and the citizens can thank you when they don't get flooded out the next time we have a...
Well, hopefully that will be the case. Listen, we've got to take a short pause here for a public service announcement, and we'll be right back with you with the Commonwealth Report and Steve Smith.
The average text takes your eyes off the road for nearly 5 seconds.
Welcome back to the Commonwealth Report. I'm State Senator Mark Pacheco, and I've been talking with Steve Smith, the Executive Director of SERPID, the Southeastern Region Economic Development District here in this part of Massachusetts in the Southeast region. We've talked about a range of issues. We started off actually talking about the Southeastern Massachusetts rail, line to New Bedford and Fall River, and I think I want to end the interview talking about that again, to try to encourage citizens of the region to continue to contact their elected officials, to continue to talk to the Patrick administration, and also as we look forward to next year's campaign in 2014, there will be a number of political leaders that will be seeking your support for Governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And it's important that this issue be on any future governor's agenda because of the number of jobs that it will create in southeastern Massachusetts, especially in light of what has happened with the vote, or what may be already decided by the time a governor is running for office in 2014. We may in fact have a slot parlor in the town of Raynham. We may in fact have either a Wampanoag casino, tribal casino, or a commercial casino that is well on the way of moving forward. And having rail through this region will make a significant difference in the lives of people in a positive way. And it's my understanding, Steve, we're talking, close to 10,000 jobs that would be created with the extension of this rail corridor to Fall River and New Bedford.
Yeah, I think the number is 3,800 direct jobs, and then a number of spin-off jobs that get that number up into 5 figures. Mm-hmm. And you're absolutely right. Governor Patrick has been the greatest friend for this project as ever had. I don't want to have to go back to the days when we have to rely on the members of the legislature to battle the governor's office to keep the project alive. It's really important for our region. One of the positive things now, the environmental review has taken forever. The Corps of Engineers has taken forever. As you know, I know you've organized your colleagues to make the point known that you'd like that done sooner rather than later. They are within weeks of putting out their final environmental impact statement, which will be the basis for doing permitting. They claim, and I hope they're right, that they're taking so long so they can make it bulletproof, so that because there's always a threat of lawsuits, and that they can have all their T's crossed and all their I's dotted to make the project going forward. But it will be it has major economic impact. It has revitalization of the downtowns around the stations, housing development. I mean, there can be really good things. You only have to look around the Commonwealth and around the country to see what commuter rail stations have done and how important they've been. So,
well, I think the point that you made earlier about the extension of 495 rail.
Yeah.
I mean, not rail, but the highway system. And it's a transportation link. Yeah. With that expansion, we saw economic development and job growth. I think we'll see the same thing with rail. Any final comments? We have about 40 seconds.
Well, I'm actually closing in on retirement in a few years, not imminent, but it's been great working in Southeast Massachusetts, and I feel like I've been a partner with you all along the whole time.
Yes, you
and
certainly have.
It's been really good, and it's been a fun process, and I'm not done yet, as I say, but it's been a really good run.
Well, you've done a great job, and I want to thank you, all the staff at SERPID, and I want to thank all of you at home for tuning in to the Commonwealth Report. This is Mark Pacheco signing off for this edition of the Commonwealth Report. Thank you.